So, when I say the phrase mass communication, what's the first thing that pops into your head? You're probably picturing giant TV networks, right? Or maybe major newspapers. Well, what if I told you that entire definition is totally out of date? In this explainer, we're going to tear down that old idea and build a new one that actually makes sense for the wild, hyper-connected world we live in today. Just think about it for a second. That YouTuber you watch, the one with millions of subscribers, are they mass media? How about a TikTok video that gets seen by 100 million people? Our gut tells us, yeah, probably. But the old definitions, they just don't have a neat little box to put them in. And that's the big question we're going to get to the bottom of. You see, to make sense of our media world today, it's like we have to bridge this enormous gap. Over on one side, you've got the crazy, complex reality of the internet. And on the other, you have these classic, almost mechanical-looking models of communication from way back in the mid-20th century. The old blueprints just don't work anymore. And a lot of the confusion, it all starts with one of the most misunderstood words out there, mass. Okay, so to really get a handle on mass communication, we gotta hit rewind for a minute and understand what sociologists originally meant by the word mass. And here's a spoiler alert, it has nothing to do with a brainwashed anonymous crowd. The original meaning was actually way more neutral, just analytical. You know, it's a huge misconception that early scholars use the word mass as some kind of insult. But in reality, they were using it as a neutral term. It was their way of describing a totally new kind of social group that was popping up in modern industrial societies. It was simply a tool for understanding, not a critique of the public. And this is where the sociologist Herbert Blumer comes in with a really useful definition. He said a mass is basically a collection of people who are detached from one another, but they're all focused on the same thing at the same time. You know, like a huge news event, a big movie premiere, or even a viral video. They don't know each other, they're not organized, but they share a temporary focus. And that word, temporary, that is absolutely the key here. And this chart here, it's a great way to see the huge societal shift that even made the mass possible. A sociologist named Ferdinand Tönnies talked about a move from what he called Gemeinschaft. Those are your tight-knit traditional communities where everyone knows everyone, to Gesellschaft. That's the larger modern society where we're all connected more by shared interests and goals. A mass can really only form inside this bigger, more detached kind of society. But this is where the story takes a really interesting twist. After World War II, this idea of mass society started to get a really bad reputation. A bunch of influential critics started attacking the whole concept, painting this picture of it as this negative, destructive force. And honestly, they created a caricature that still kind of shapes how we think about media and its audience today. And this right here, this is basically the smoking gun. Critics like Daniel Bell grabbed this quote from Herbert Blumer and took it completely out of context. I mean, when you read it like this, it sounds terrifying, right? It sounds like he's describing a world full of isolated, rootless people who are just totally vulnerable to propaganda. But that is not at all what he meant. Because here is the full context. Blumer's actual point was that people act as a mass only in very specific situations, like when they're dealing with something new, something outside of their immediate local community. He was super clear that these people still have families, they still have communities, they are not permanently isolated. So the big, crucial point to walk away with is this. Being part of a mass audience is just a temporary role you play. It doesn't magically erase your family, your friends, or your community. And getting this right is so fundamental if we're going to talk about modern media without all that old pessimistic baggage. All right, so we've tackled mass. Now, what about the communication part of the phrase? Well, just like our idea of mass, our old models for communication are, frankly, crying out for an update. They used to see it as a simple one-way street. Say hello to the classic Shannon and Weaver model from 1949. It's basically an engineering diagram for talking. You've got a sender who sends a message through a channel to a receiver. It's clean, it's linear, and it completely misses the messy, beautiful human part of how we actually understand things. It treats communication like a pipeline, not a conversation. But a much better way to look at it, a social model, shows us that context is just, well, it's everything. Both the person sending the message and the person receiving it exist inside what you could call an envelope of understanding. That's their culture, their personal experiences, the situation they're in. Communication isn't just about shipping data from point A to point B. It's about creating meaning together within a shared context. Okay, so we've updated our idea of mass and we've updated our idea of communication. Now we can finally put them together and build a new comprehensive definition that actually works for the 21st century. And for that, we're going to turn to the work of a communication scholar named Roland Lorimer. And Lorimer's genius solution is to stop trying to cram everything into one box. Instead, he says we should think of mass communication as three different but related things. There's the traditional top-down broadcast model, the decentralized model of the web, and even person-to-person interactions that have been scaled up to a societal level. Let's break each of those down real quick. Okay, part one. This is the one we all know. It's the classic stuff. Centralized dissemination. This is your big-budget, corporately financed media that's produced on an industrial scale. It's a one-to-many broadcast. Think network TV, Hollywood movies, major newspapers. This model is still very much around. Then we get to part two, and this is where the internet just flips the entire script. Decentralized dissemination. This model uses publicly accessible channels, basically the web, to let literally anyone become a broadcaster. This is the world of blogs, of YouTube, of independent creators. It's not one-to-many anymore, it's many-to-many. And this third part, this is the one that might actually blow your mind a little. Mass scale interaction. This recategorizes things we use every day but never really thought of as mass media. We're talking about person-to-person communication that now happens on a societal level. Things like email, the telephone, even direct messaging on social media. They allow for the exchange of ideas between individuals on a massive global scale. Okay, so why does any of this matter? I mean, who cares about some academic definition? Well, it matters because this new three-part model isn't just theory. It reflects a massive power shift in our society. And maybe most importantly, it finally recognizes that the line between who makes the media and who consumes it has been totally and completely blurred. And that right there is the bottom line, the big takeaway from all of this. We've moved from a system where a handful of powerful institutions talked at a passive audience to a system where we are all active participants. We are all broadcasters. We are all creators. This new model finally validates the reality that the public isn't just sitting there receiving messages anymore. We are out there actively making and shaping them ourselves. And that leaves us with a pretty big, thought-provoking question, doesn't it? Under the old model, it was easy to sit back and critique the media from a distance. But if this new definition is true, if we are all part of the mass media ecosystem now, then that responsibility is shared. It really makes you wonder, what stories will you choose to tell?